Today we're going to be looking at Strawberry Leopard in the color Lucky Penny. So first thing you might notice is that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12. I do quickly just want to say that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do different pictures and video clips and such throughout the videos, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. Also, my swatches are not virgin hair. That means they've been chemically colored, treated, or bleached at least some point in their lifetimes. 1 is green, 2 is gray, 3 is a natural red, 4 is a soft black, 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So I'm going to start by taking the color directly from the container, and I will apply it to the top of each swatch. Then some people do like to dilute their dye, so I will do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Please keep in mind everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Plus, different screens and monitors can make colors look different, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you.
I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. Oh, nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. 'Cause nothing feels the same without you now. What's the point in dreaming if I lose my voice? The second I get caught by you, I wanted you to know that I'm afraid, but we can make it go away. I hope you hear the things I say when I'm choked up next to you. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. Oh, nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime.
For the diluted section, we're going to do a 4:1 ratio, so that's going to be 1 part of the dye to 4 parts diluter. If you don't know what diluter is, the quick answer I like to give is that it's essentially something that lightens the color of your semi-permanent dye. A lot of brands will sell their own version of a diluter, which I do recommend because it can keep the same consistency, which is really nice. But because I use so many different brands and colors on my channel, I actually just use a plain white conditioner as my diluter.
All my friends are wasting time, and I'm afraid I'm wasting my whole life trying to be something I can't. I've waited for a lifetime.
Alright, I'm going to let these sit for about 2 hours so that the color can fully absorb. I will then rinse it out, and when they are dry, I will meet you back here and we can do some comparisons. So I would like to just remind everyone once again that my swatches are not virgin hair. Virgin hair tends to be less porous, which means when it comes to semi-permanent dye, it can struggle to take the color, and even if it will take the color, it sometimes will have a hard time holding on to color depending on how porous your hair is. So I do see a difference on a majority of my swatches, but I do just want to warn that if you have virgin hair, that's not always going to be the case. But that being said, this does seem to be a little bit more pigmented of a color, so if you did want to try a color like this over virgin hair, I do think you would be more likely to get a result with this versus something that is lighter or less pigmented. But I did just want to give that warning. Doing a strand test will probably be quite helpful. Now, also with that being said, I think it's kind of obvious, but the number 11 swatch definitely looks a lot different from the rest of the swatches. And I noticed this the second I started applying the dye. Even the texture of the hair feels different, and I'm kind of concerned that it is a majority of synthetic hair, and that is likely why it turned out like it did. Hopefully that doesn't continue in the future. I may even consider purchasing from somewhere else to try and avoid this, because obviously I want these to be as accurate as possible. Now, I will say if your hair is less porous, there is a chance your hair would still look like number 11. So I'm not going to completely discount it out, but I do just want to say it kind of even just feels different from the rest of the swatches. So I have a feeling it's mostly on natural hair. Likely on more porous hair, it would probably have a similar undertone to 10 where it leans very red, just probably would be a tad bit lighter. So number 1 was green. I'm finding that with these sort of burnt oranges, on top of the green, it tends to look a little bit more natural. So over the top of number 1, which is the direct eye portion, definitely has a more brown quality. Over the more natural swatches, like even the browns, there's a lot more red that comes through that kind of disappears with the number 1 swatch. Red and green are technically across from each other in the color wheel, so they could be canceling each other out or neutralizing each other a bit, and that is probably why it turns out like it does. So it's almost close to like a natural red, but again, do a strand test on your hair to make sure. On the bottom section, the diluted section, that one is a lot more green, so I would probably recommend if you're trying to cover green, do not dilute it as much as I did. It almost has a greenish gold quality. It's quite interesting. 2 was the gray. If we're comparing that to like the number 10 swatch, for example, it does also have a slightly more natural quality. I think it's because the mutedness of the hair beforehand gives it that, but it's definitely not as brown as like the number 1 is, so it's still definitely burnt orange in comparison, just a little bit more muted. 3 was the natural red. There probably is a difference on the diluted section, but it's kind of hard to tell, especially compared to the direct eye portion. It almost looks like it did before, but with how pigmented this color is, I'm imagining there still is a difference. Over the top half, it kind of looks like a natural red still, just a little more saturated, because a lot of natural reds are probably a little bit more muted. I think most people's natural hair is pretty muted compared to semi-permanent dyes. So you could always use a color like this to sort of punch up your natural color if you have a natural red. 4 was black. I don't see a difference on that, and that's the only swatch I don't see a difference on. 5 was the darker brown. Similar to number 3, I want to say that there's probably a difference on the diluted section. I just can't really see it without seeing how it looked before. It just looks like a warmer dark brown. It probably is more warm than it used to be. The top half, I would say, still looks like a dark brown, but again, warmer than it was. I definitely see a little bit like reddish poking through there. 6 is a similar idea. It still looks pretty brown, but there's more red on that swatch on the direct eye than I see on the 5. Same with the diluted section. 7 is where I can really start to see more reddish orangey undertones than brown, but because it's still over a medium brown, dark blondish color, it has a more natural look than maybe like the number 10 does. And then basically as the swatches themselves get lighter, the less brown you see coming through, so it looks more and more saturated. Overall, I would say this orange leans on the red end of the orangey spectrum. Now when you dilute it, it definitely looks a lot more orange, but if you were to put this over darker hair, even like the blonder swatches, it definitely looks more red than orange. But I'm assuming it would fade to be kind of like the diluted section to look less red and a little bit more orange. Now with the number 11 swatch being likely unnatural hair, if you are listening, it definitely didn't take as much red, and it definitely has a much more coppery kind of look to it. And then we jump to number 12, which once again has that very red look to it. So I think on most people's hair, if it's platinum, it'll probably have, again, slightly more red look than it does now. Just probably a little bit lighter than 10, I would say. Also, I do just want to say, if you look at the container for Lucky Penny, it has almost a pink look to it, which is sort of what I was expecting. And while I think this color is really pretty, I do just want to apologize for anybody who watches my channel regularly. I didn't mean to do so many oranges in such a short period of time, especially such similar ones. I was expecting this to be a little bit different. But that being said, let's get into the comparisons. So as usual, I have 2. Let's start with Arctic Fox in the color Ginger Flare. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and 9. I'm going to be repeating myself a little bit from a more recent video I did. So if you watch both those videos, I'm sorry. But when I did the Ginger Flare, comparing that to the other oranges in their collection, the Ginger Flare definitely leans more red. And while it still definitely leans red, I would say that the Lucky Penny seems to have a touch more red and is a little bit darker. Obviously, that's going to be hard to tell on the number 11 swatch, but if you look at especially the number 9 swatch, it is quite obvious the difference. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit more burnt orange versus like a burnt red, Ginger Flare would probably be better, whereas you're going to get slightly more red with the Lucky Penny. The other comparison I wanted to look at is Good Die Young in the color Toxicity. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and 9. If we're looking at this like a spectrum, the Lucky Penny out of the 3 that we're looking at is definitely the most red, and Toxicity is definitely the most orange. It almost actually looks more similar to the Platinum Blonde swatch. So if you kind of like how the Platinum Blonde swatch turned out, but you were disappointed to know that it likely wouldn't look like that on Platinum Blonde hair, the Toxicity might actually be a good alternative, because even though it also has a slightly reddish undertone, it is quite muted and is more orange than the Ginger Flare. As far as the depth goes, I think the Lucky Penny is still just a touch darker. It's especially noticeable on the number 9 swatch. They're not as far off versus when we look at the Ginger Flare, that one definitely is a little bit lighter. All right, now I'd like to look at our before and after clips. Those, as well as everything past this point in the video, is all going to be done in natural lighting.
At least this is an okay barn for running into you. It's an awful house, and I wanted to get you out. I'm working on a plan right now to come through. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. Oh, nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. 'Cause nothing feels the same without you now. What's the point in dreaming if I lose my voice? The second I get caught by you, I wanted you to know that I'm afraid, but we can make it go away. I hope you hear the things I say when I'm choked up next to you. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. Oh, nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. 'Cause nothing feels the same without you now. And all my friends are wasting time, and I'm afraid I'm wasting mine. But if you talk to me again, it'd be worth it. All my friends are wasting time, and I'm afraid I'm wasting my whole life trying to be something I can't. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. 'Cause nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime for
I hope this video helps. I think I'm gonna just quickly throw in an edit of the platinum blonde, what I think it would look like if your hair is more porous as well, just so you can kind of get a range of possibilities. Thank you so very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.